Gaiden, everybody. I am Andrew, your co-host. I'm here with Mike.
Mike.
And Gaming Gaiden is the podcast that uncovers the side stories of the gaming world as well as Japanese localization and Japanese localization professionals. All right, so today's topic, we wanted to talk about, so Mike, a lot of the times when I talk about fighting games, I often feel like, well, we're both huge fighting game fans, something that we have in common.
That is a huge, important factor in all of our experiences in the past and our friendship and our converging paths in Japan.
Yes, exactly. So what I come across, I guess mainly in America, so I never really had like a lot of fighting game conversations in Japan. I played fighting games in arcades, but I didn't have any kind of deep conversations about it, but
neither did I. It was an interesting experience to play there with the split cabs where you don't see the opponent right away.
Oh yeah, I remember you didn't like that.
No, it's not. I prefer to be next to the person. I definitely do. I mean, I respect that style lets you come and go as you please. You can save face if you lose, whatever. But I think it's just a much more interesting experience to be right next to someone.
I think that's fair. I don't think I had as much of a problem as you did. Like so what we're talking about, let's explain to the audience that might not know. So generally, if you remember arcades at all in the first place, you were standing right next to the person, side by side, basically. So that's American style. And Japanese style has that too, but they had an extra evolution that we never got in America, which is you wouldn't even see the other person really. You would like have one cabinet here and one cabinet here and like some distance, like 10 feet or more. And I think you'd be facing each other. Maybe you wouldn't.
The cabinets,
wouldn't even know.
The cabinets would be back to back. So the screens would be out. So each person would be on the opposite side, and between you and your opponent was the two cabinets. And these were sit-down cabinets too, generally.
Yeah.
So as opposed to the stand-up cabinets that are standard in America. So it was nice to have a comfortable seat, and they were leveled well and everything. Things were generally really well taken care of. It's just the lack of, physical closeness to the opponent that I felt was a problem for playing fighting games.
Right. You like that closeness.
Yeah. And I mean, it has its strengths and weaknesses, definitely in a time of COVID, it's better to be on opposite sides and all that. But there definitely was this sort of different kind of camaraderie and rivalry that would build up when you were elbow to elbow with your opponent.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It was fine. I guess I liked how new it was, but I don't know. Anyway, so in America, back to the topic at hand. In America, I've talked to a lot of people whenever they say like I don't play fighting games, they're just button mashers. It seems like they feel like. Well, the main thing is really. No. They're just straight up not interested in them. Like, that's just not their thing. Yeah. So I get it, but I just feel like fighting games are like kind of one of the most, if not the most misunderstood genre of game, because you have like, generally you kind of can understand how a game works right from the get-go. Well, you have at least a good general idea of it, the gist of it. Whereas like, it seems like when some people play fighting games, they don't even have that.
Which is really strange because, I mean, what is conflict? Isn't it the most physical conflict, the most basic thing you could possibly imagine for a game? And you see two fighters side by side, you think, oh, okay, hit the opponent. That's what I do.
Right, but I feel like like, let's take your average, like average Joe with a fighting game. They're going to boot it up and just like not even really learn the moves and just start playing. And what also the other thing that's to a detriment to fighting games is that often, well, not against like a pro player, but like let's say you have a pretty good casual player, like a lower
Hmm.
intermediate Street Fighter 2 player or whatever,
Hmm.
and that person is playing against a total noob that's just button
Hmm.
mashing. Often the button masher will win against this person. So it loses, so the fighting game will lose credit. But then in my mind, it's like,
Hmm.
well, I don't think a button masher would win against like a pro player for one, or
Right.
anyone near that level.
I think that a lot of that does depend on the game. I think some
Hmm.
games lend themselves better to button mashing. I mean, some games now have the single button combo built in. I
Yeah.
think that Marvel Capcom Infinite added it, which was not a very
Yeah.
successful game for other reasons. I thought it
Yeah.
was very good. It was very
Hmm.
ugly, but it was very good. I actually
Uh-huh.
like the 2v2 more than I like 3v3. But I think Persona 4 Arena had that. That might have been the first time I saw it implemented. Was in Persona 4 Arena. You just press X and you got an auto combo. I think
I
Dragon
don't
Ball
like
did
that
it,
trend. Don't like that trend with all the easy combos.
but the other thing about it was, and I can't remember if it was all of them or if it was just maybe Dragon Ball. One or some of them had a a handicap to it where you can do this auto combo. Um, and it'll work if you get the first hit. You just keep pressing the button. But it did 20% less damage than if someone had done it manually. It's kind of like
Yeah.
driving a car, right? The racer who's driving manual is always going to win if they're a more skilled driver than the one on
Yeah.
automatic, even if they were doing the same things, just
Hmm.
because they can adjust the gear timings. And
Right.
that's how they took that approach. But I don't remember which game that was or if it was more than one. So games like
Okay.
that, a masher could end up winning, especially if it's two new players and the the one new player mashes only one button instead of multiple buttons. They're probably going to get the win. But I find that games like Street Fighter, which is really where it all kind of bore out from, was it really came down to skill.
Yeah, but even then, I feel like again,
Mm-hmm.
if you had like an okay casual player and
Mm-hmm.
then like a total complete noob,
Mm-hmm.
there's a good chance. I've seen it so many times that
Yeah.
complete noob will just button mash and win, and that's where I feel like that's part of the reason why fighting games have this. Well, they're just a button masher. It's
Yeah.
just like there's no strategy to it whatsoever. Meanwhile,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking like it's got some of the most strategy in video gaming ever. It just feels like it's the strategy's there, but too
Mm-hmm.
quick for most people to gauge. Like if it's like
Yeah.
a turn-based, like the ultimate slower example would be like turn-based strategy games or RPGs because you can definitely see the strategy there. It's like a
Yeah.
board game, but this is like this almost the same level, if not more, like level of strategy, but just a
Mm-hmm.
hundred or a thousand times quicker,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
this is like it's like a martial art. It replicates martial arts in its own way, and it is chess. It's a physical chess game and mental, as chess would be.
I've tried to explain to people before, and always feels like it's falling on deaf ears. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like for example, you've got you've got quick moves, you've got slow moves, you've got the reach of the characters. You have
Mm-hmm.
to again, it's about fighting, right? The reach of it, the how they jump, the jumping attacks themselves, how slow the special moves are, how
Mm-hmm.
fast they are. And then there's the rock, paper, scissors aspect, which is another level they're not even fucking ever thinking about. But like, if you block, you throw. If they punch
Mm-hmm.
high, you punch low. If they punch low, you punch high. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing, the rock, paper, scissors kind of aspect of fighting games. And like that
Yeah.
just adds so much to it. And I guess there's a part of me that just wishes that people would just understand. But you know what I mean? But like it's just not going to be their thing at the end of the day, which I get because I'm an adult. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's just frustrating because even when I do explain it, it's like they don't and this is not just a one-time thing. This happens so many times. Like this, like it just kills me, man. Like I really wish that more people would get it, but you know,
So-
whatever. But the fighting game community, the FGC as it's called now, it's like it's strong.
Yeah.
It's stronger than ever. So like
they're
a
on the
niche
complete
thing, but-
opposite end of the spectrum, where like I,
Yeah.
as a professional educator, look at so many FGC players and think like, you guys need to understand what it's like to learn. Like you're
Right.
not recognizing that someone has to learn things here.
Yeah,
you know-
you have to have some patience, and you got to do the training mode to learn the combos and shit.
You know, and I think back to my experience growing up. So I lived in a small neighborhood. It was in the Bronx, and but it was pretty small. It was a disconnected island, you know. So it was just like my class and the class above. You know, we all had a sense of each other. And Street Fighter 1 came into the pizza place. And
Oh my
we
God.
a few of us really took to it. Like we had already played it. I had played it at Nathan's, and when I first played it, it was on the 2-button pressure sensitive cab, and I was a little small, so it was kind of like boom, 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 trying to hit it to get the fierce punch out. But Street Fighter 1 was really, we can look back now and say like, oof, those were tough controls. It was not really responsive. But we had a group of guys who really liked it. And when Street Fighter 2 came along and the pizza place got that in, it was a whole new culture. All of a sudden, everybody in the neighborhood was coming to the pizza place to play. And so we built up this whole thing around it. You know, everybody would put their quarter up. You know, I got next. Who you gonna? I want to pick that character because
Did that quarter up thing start like immediately?
I don't remember if it did, but it pretty quickly became just like the natural thing for people to do. Being like, yeah, just put my quarter up there.
Yeah.
But it was usually clear, like, who's got next? I got next.
Okay.
But yeah, when I think back to those times, there were a few of us who really got into it. And the people who wanted to play it casually were pushed out because they felt the skill gap. There was a huge divide between the people who could play it and the people who were having trouble learning it.
Right.
So I didn't have an issue where people were like, oh, it's mashing. Instead, I had kind of the modern issue where people say like, oh, well, I'm losing at this game online because I'm not a kid and I don't have all day to play this. You know?
Yeah.
We saw that kind of thing early on. And we also had lots of people who would, get really mad and say things like, I'm going to kick your butt for real now. Like, I can beat you in a fight. Go ahead, step away from the game. Was
this the time in which arcades were like how they were portrayed in Ninja Turtles 1, where they're kind of like a bad kid hangout?
I mean, in this case, it was our neighborhood, and a lot of our peers were something along the lines of bad kids. There were definitely a lot of troublemakers, but most of them chilled out because we were in the pizza place and there would be others being around like, yo, take it easy, man, calm down, it's a game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember one time I went to Rye Playland, which is an amusement park a little north of New York City, and it might be you might know it from a Mariah Carey video where she rides, I think, the Dragon Coaster.
Oh, that famous
Fantasy.
one, which is on the, that was a very special music video for me, as it were, Mike.
I understand. But yeah, I remember I went up to Playland one time and I was excited, because like I had only really been playing a lot in my neighborhood. And so it was pretty clear what the hierarchy was in my neighborhood. There were 3 guys who were really good, and then there was me, and then there was everybody else pretty much.
So you were in the middle.
I was chilling out on the intermediate plateau, just like I do now, because okay. I'm not competitive in the sense that I'm willing to work and learn. But when I played with Street Fighter, it was like I was playing with my good friends, and like I still have a good friend from childhood. We met around kindergarten, and he just recently won a Super Turbo championship
Wow.
this past weekend. So we still
Oh,
talk about that.
wow. He's
But
still playing, well, a lot of people
yeah,
are still playing, but
yeah. So the depth is nigh infinite.
right. I
But
know, yeah. That people think that there's no depth to him at all. And it's just it's one of my biggest pet peeves, especially in gaming.
yeah,
It drives me
people tend to
crazy.
want to dismiss things, especially
Yeah.
if they can't excel at it fast. I do think a lot of people are sore losers and sore winners. I see a lot of it. I still play fighting games on Fightcade and stuff here and there. I play
Mm-hmm.
on Xbox, and I'll play a match. And even if like I just don't see any reason for it, but I'll get messages sometimes that are just like, "Oh, use a real character," or something like that. I'm like, you took the time to send me a message in Xbox Live typing on your controller to say to grief me? Like, I just don't get it. But to get back on track to the story,
who would be a real character?
I like to use Hugo in Third Strike, and
Oh, wow.
he's generally considered low tier, but like,
You like the big characters. You like Potemkin?
absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
I do. Well, this is the thing, right? It's kind of like, as someone who doesn't want to dedicate a lot of time to learning the ins and outs and maximizing combos and such, a
Mm-hmm.
big character can really play on fundamentals. And my
Right.
fundamentals are going to be strong because I played a whole lot of Street Fighter 1 and Street Fighter 2 against a whole lot of people growing up. And like I said, the person that I played with the most as a kid is now consistently like the best performing Super Turbo player in America.
That's insane, man.
So I would, it used to be that I would play him, 20 matches and I'd win one, maybe two. And now it's probably more like we'd play 50 matches and I'd win one round instead of a match.
Who does he main?
He usually plays old Ryu.
Okay.
But
Ryu,
I saw him playing.
Ryu,
Yeah.
Ryu is like they've made
He's the
made
core.
Ryu
He's
and
the
Ken.
fundamentals of Street Fighter.
He is, but like have you seen like in Street Fighter 5, no one ever picks the Shotokan characters, the Shotos.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the way the game plays, whoever is going to be working to their strengths, there's now a professional scene around it. So people have money on the line and they want to win and they want to have a good chance. And if someone is not doing well, like what is it, Daigo Umehara, right, was generally, considered to be synonymous with Ryu as like his character of choice. And he plays Guile in Street Fighter 5.
Right.
And I mean, I think a lot of players are seeing that character Luke now is a good go-to, right? He's the better one. If you want to win, it's better to pick Luke.
I don't like Luke, man. I haven't seen a lot of his gameplay. I've seen a little bit, but to me, oh man, this is getting into another topic, but hell, why not?
Yeah.
This is a good topic to get into. Okay, so I think we've seen it's good to evolve, and Street Fighter is always evolving.
Yeah.
I like that, but I feel like MMA culture is really entrenched in Street Fighter now. And
are you saying that? I'm not sure if you mean it which way.
So MMA has influenced Street Fighter.
Okay, right.
Maybe Street Fighter's influenced MMA too in the real world, but let's say, UFC and UFC culture worldwide. And again, I get it. It's huge. That's influent. And you see that with characters like Luke, and even the way there's something about the way Street Fighter 6 has been portrayed to me, which I don't hate it. I just think it's different than it used to be because I'm turning, I keep saying I'm 38, but I'm going to be in a month and a half. I'm 37 at the moment anyway. So like, I feel like
you're old enough to be set in your ways.
Yeah. These are old man comments at this point. So basically, to me, there's something different from MMA UFC culture and that 80s martial arts fantasy that Street Fighter has one foot in still. but
Yeah.
it's slowly leaving that. And to me, I like the more fantasy side of it. I like the 80s wildness. I like the 80s. I don't know a whole lot about it, but like the 80s wrestling with all the crazier characters. Like I'd rather see Yokozuna instead of John Cena. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
John Cena looks just so normal. I want to see like a little bit more pageantry or more, like remember the Street Fighter anime where he's like,
Yeah.
Dulcim is like, have you ever felt the fighting spirit of another? Like that shit is what I eat up with a spoon. And I feel like Luke's MMA is never going to say that, but you know what I mean? Like, and maybe they'll release more characters like that. I don't know. But anyway, what are your thoughts on all this?
I absolutely understand what you're saying. I picked up on it too immediately, of course. And when they had the early information about Luke, I think they were saying something like, this guy sort of represents the future of Street Fighter. And I think that it's okay. I'm fine with it. I mean, for me, as someone who enjoys fighting games, give me a new fighting game. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. It's cool. I don't really mind either way.
Right.
There's plenty of great games to play. There's always going to be one available. But the thing with the original character designs for Street Fighter, like the comparison to wrestling that you brought up, is that they're all basically stereotypes and caricatures.
Yes.
And this is the thing. That's what makes them so immediately accessible to a worldwide audience, but also what prevents them from really sort of connecting on a more human level. And I think that for a modern audience, I think MMA is where fighting is now globally.
I understand.
And if we are going to appeal to people and have that broad audience and bring a lot of folks into fighting games and get past the whole learning phase, then I think we do need to have some changes that reflect the change in the world. And I think that people do want to see more sort of respectful representation, more realistic representation in their characters. And there will always be still fantasy things because, I mean, the way these fighting games work to begin with is fantastic, right? You're not going to get knocked out like that and get right back up. Nobody's throwing fireballs naturally. Nobody's, like,
if they take that away from Street Fighter, that'll be a total sea change.
So
right?
like even this guy, Luke, right? So I've played a bit of him. I had some fight money, which is the in-game currency for Street Fighter V on the PC version. Because I didn't get that season pass on the PC or anything. I got it on PlayStation initially. I picked up Luke to say like, all right, they say he's the future of this. Let's try him out. And he has a fireball, a projectile.
Oh, right? He does. Okay.
He does. And it's like this immediate lightning fast thing that goes all the way across the screen.
Oh.
And I'm just like, that just puts the Hadouken to shame. It's insane how fast and effective this is. Now, most of his other moves are like, yeah, okay. Those look like pretty standard MMA type things. Of course, he has an uppercut too, but it's like it's kind of a weird, goofy uppercut. It looks like kind of a cross between Soul Bad Guy's uppercut and Sean from Street Fighter 3. It's kind of like...
People forget about Sean.
It's a little loose. I don't know. It's weird.
Right.
But yeah, so the thing is, like, even when they take this character who's supposed to be the future of Street Fighter, right? And he represents the sort of the standard MMA thing. He's got this insane projectile that just like, what is that? Why is there like just this weird little lightning shot that goes across the screen? So you're not going to lose the hallmarks of gameplay that are fantastic. But I think some of the things like Yokozuna, I'm not sure if audiences today would respond to Yokozuna the same way. They might be, especially not with how Japanese language and culture have proliferated since that time.
Well, Yokozuna's not a great example,
right?
Because cultural appropriation. That guy was probably not even Japanese, probably Hawaiian or some shit. I forget.
Well, I think
was he Japanese?
I thought Yokozuna. I don't actually know.
Correct us in the comments
at the time. But if I remember correctly, it might have been that he was Originally a sumo wrestler who then moved into professional wrestling.
I mean, the overall point, it could be Macho Man or whatever. It's
Mhm.
it was a heightened costume and pageantry
Yeah.
of it, which
Yeah.
still sticks around a little bit, but like it was nothing but that at that time, like Undertaker and shit.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
um
No, I think it's
yeah.
really fun to have those ridiculous characters. I do. And I hope that they always do give us some. But
hmm
to reach a broader audience, I think it's great to have some realistic designs on MMA fighters that
I guess
just,
a little. Go
that's
ahead.
what
Sorry.
fighting is now.
Yeah, a little bit of here, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That would be good, I
Hmm.
guess. Yeah, you open my mind to that a little bit more than I was initially. It just my knee jerk reaction was I just don't like that. Like I like
Yeah.
a another Yoshimitsu type character or something.
Yeah.
I don't like somebody like that in Street Fighter or something. But
Yeah.
again, I'll always go for a lot the really Japanese designs.
Well, that's the
And
thing. I think that Capcom as a company is just so incredibly global. They're globally minded.
yes,
You know, they've
yes,
always
yes.
been this multi-platform behemoth. They've always been like, yeah, we're going to make games for every system, and we're also going to make our old games accessible repeatedly. Like they just do things very differently from most of the Japanese developers.
They're
And
continually successful.
if you want to see a lot of like sort of ridiculous, over the top, weird, fantastic character designs, I love Guilty Gear.
Guilty Gear, dude.
But it's also excessively anime.
They call them anime fighters now, by
Yeah.
the way, or some people do.
Yeah,
Like
GG is the original.
that's true. Guilty Gear. Dude, I know I'm gonna sound picky here, but like
Hmm.
I definitely like a lot of Guilty Gear and a
Hmm.
lot of the anime fighters, and I'm glad they exist. I
Hmm.
want variety in the fighting game community, but sometimes it's like I don't know. It's like just not some of them just not the designs that I want, and I like metal too, but like
Hmm.
some of it, like some of the characters look like 1980s metal, which is fine. But as a guy that's into metal, I would like to see some other metal stereotype if we're doing stereotypes. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
So they're still looking like Axel or whatever his name is from Guns N' Roses,
Hmm.
which is cool. I get it, but I don't know. That's another topic. But
Well,
Guilty
no,
Gear
it
Strive
it
looks
directly
incredible.
relates. It directly relates to what you were just saying about Street Fighter 6,
Yeah.
right? You're on the opposite side on this one, right?
I I am inconsistent, I think.
No, no, no. That's, you don't have to be consistent with that. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, you can recognize, okay, well, now you're on the other side of the fence when it comes to this game because you want to see the representation for the more modern metal or diaspora.
It could be, but the thing is, even when it's more modern,
Hmm.
it being metal, there's it's always going to be some extremity to it.
Hmm.
Like there's nothing really extreme about Luke. For me personally, maybe it's like the extreme sports or whatever, but
Yeah.
like of the 90s we grew up in, but like there's I guess you could make a bland metal guy, but like I would still even then if it was a modern dude or woman or whatever,
Hmm.
I think I'd still want that pageantry there, some kind of crazy costume.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know what it would be. I don't know what it would look like, but whatever. That's just the kind
Yeah.
of my taste with that kind of thing. I love the martial arts fantasy aspect. Like I mean, my guilty pleasure, in a sense, like well, I don't know how guilty it is, but I really like a lot of the Mortal Kombat designs, even though they're really
Hmm.
plain. Some like all the ninja looks, they're sort of plain looking. I get it,
Yeah.
but I still kind of like it. And this is another side story, by
But
the
they do.
way.
They capture that fun, campy spirit. They really do.
Martial arts fantasy, man,
Hmm.
martial arts fantasy, with horror thrown in with Mortal Kombat.
Mm.
But this is a good Japanese culture thing to throw in here with Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat was, for the listener, I'm sure Mike knows. I'm sure you know Mike, but
Hmm.
for everybody out there, Mortal Kombat never really that big in Japan. But they've always been very into just their fighters, Street Fighter or whatever. To
Hmm.
this day, I think it still doesn't have that much play in Japan.
Hmm.
But when I'm trying, so one time I'm playing Mortal Kombat, or we're at like a I'm at a GameStop in America with a Japanese friend. This is years ago.
Hmm.
And I point to Mortal Kombat and like Sub-Zero's there or Scorpion or whatever. And then my Japanese friend asked me, "Oh, is he Chinese?" And then I think this is just a bunch of Asian shit thrown in together, made by, Ed
Yeah.
Boon and John Tobias are Hispanic or at least half Latino. So I guess, so it's not like made by white dude or whatever, but like, so there's some representation there. But what I'm saying is like, it's
But
made
from
by
a different culture, from
a
what's
different
being
culture.
portrayed.
Yeah. So they just liked Big Trouble in Little China and just threw a bunch of Asian shit together.
God, I
And
love that
boom, you
movie.
got Scorpion and Sub-Zero. And like, most Americans aren't really thinking
Yeah.
about it that way. And I wasn't either. And then I was just
Mhm.
like, oh man, that is something Mortal Kombat has to kind of deal with these days. But they've dealt with it pretty good, I guess. But you know what I mean?
Not sure
I just
if
thought it was
Mortal Kombat
interesting.
has to deal with it.
I guess
don't
it's so
know.
much fantasy, it doesn't really matter, right?
I think that Mortal Kombat will forever be stuck in its own sort of weird little time loop, no
That's
matter
true.
what they do. The thing for me with Mortal Kombat, and I think this may be somewhat of the reason that it's not as appealing in Japan, is that I think the animation is really weak. The hits don't feel like hits, and nothing about it really feels fluid. I think there's a lot of spectacle of ultra violence, which was great when I was like 12. I'm not sure how old I was, but to see this sort of modern incarnations of Mortal Kombat just try to outgore each other with the fatalities is just really odd to me. I don't know. And the X-ray attacks and stuff, like it's just that's not really where the joy is for me. And no matter how well they animate that stuff, it's still just, it's not going to be as nice as a simple uppercut or sunburst effect on a super combo finish.
Okay, I know what you're saying. I do think that Mortal Kombat has always played stiff.
Yes, stiff is a great word for it. Yeah.
And there's just, oh man, this is a whole other topic I'm going to get into in a second. But okay, let me bring it back to this one topic here. So even though it's stiff, I think that it has evolved very well.
Mm-hmm.
The X-ray stuff is a little bit much, but I do think decadence is a part of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was saying, I'm not sure if Mortal Kombat needs to deal with anything, because they're so far in their own thing, and the people who play those games love that.
Oh, definitely. So, and the combo system works. They've obviously paid a lot of attention to that. And there's there is a deep fighting mechanic there. That's why it's still around.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the Japanese, outside of just sheer, I don't know what you call it, not patriotism, but just being into their own culture's products. Outside of that, it's just a lot, especially the older ones, just stiffer than Street Fighter and anything made in Japan, really. Yeah. And it got a little smoother when it got to 3D, but it still kind of plays similarly. And this is kind of like a gaming conspiracy theory I've made for myself in the past few years or so. But if you look at like anime fluid movement, if you look at Kung Fu movies, I know that's China, but still Asia as a whole, and Japanese live action as well, a lot of emphasis on movement. Street Fighter moves better,
Hmm.
Uh, American animation is very stiff by comparison. The more you go back in time, especially.
Well, I would disagree there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel that Japanese animation is stiff by design.
it
Um,
depends on if it's Sakuga or not, though.
but they do it so well. That's what rather than stiff, it's limited animation. That
Hmm.
rather than say like something like Disney that went for proper 24 frames, right, and had this
Yeah,
beautiful work done on is going as far back as like Snow White. Japanese animation, you could sit there and go frame by frame in even like a Ghibli film and say like, oh, there were only 12 frames in that second of footage,
yeah.
you know? Or like think about the I don't know what you call this effect. We've seen it for years and years, but say like something in Phoenix Wright where he's static, but everything's moving behind him,
Yeah,
which
that's a
then got
classic
put into
anime.
the combo finishers, right?
Right,
Like you would get
right.
that, and or they're there and they're static, but the mouth just moves. I just feel like their animation is not stiffer, but it's limited animation. It has fewer frames. It's not as fluid, but it's still somehow more energetic.
I see what you're saying. I think I'm mainly talking about when they make Sakuga, which is like, that one section of the anime
All the
that they really pay
keyframes.
attention to. They
Yeah.
really pay attention to that. And the movies especially too, like
Mm-hmm.
Akira or whatever, or yeah, there's more of a budget in the movies. So like especially camera movement.
Mm-hmm.
The movement, that's one of the main things I keyed into anime when I was a kid that got me on this journey to begin with Japan. Well, and video games too, but it was the movement, man, and the
Mm-hmm.
detail. But like for example, the Thundercats intro was made by a Japanese company,
Yeah.
and that movement is so dynamic,
Mm.
and Americans weren't doing stuff like that
Yeah,
at the time.
I think back on it. I haven't seen it in years, but I can feel that camera moving as he's like lifting the sword up and it comes down to look up and yeah.
Incredible movement, incredible camera movement, and I thought it was incredible. So like my conspiracy theory with all this stuff, it just feels like there's more of an eye to movement itself.
Hmm.
And maybe I don't want to be too stereotypical, but maybe there's something to do with like kung fu culture seeping into the rest of Asia. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
it is. White, they often say white people are stiff compared to
Mm-hmm.
them. You know what I mean? Like, are there
Yeah.
limber? Again, I know we're on the internet saying this stuff, but like, it seems to be a stereotype that is true that Asian people can be a lot more limber than white people. White people seem so stiff by comparison, and maybe that has to do with sitting on the floor while you eat and things like that. There's some studies on that I've heard. Anyway,
Yeah. I mean,
maybe
obviously, it would be nothing physically inherent. It would have to be a cultural thing.
I'm saying cultural.
Yeah, I do remember. It's funny because, I went to a high school with a lot of international students, and I was watching Mortal Kombat, the first Mortal Kombat movie,
Yeah,
which to this day, in my opinion, remains one of the most perfectly faithful adaptations of a video game into a movie
it's
that there
great.
will ever be. It's just,
Yes.
it was perfect. I
Mhm.
mean, you can call it schlocky and silly and fun. And you know what? It was all those things, and we all loved it.
Mhm.
But we were watching it, and one of my friends came in, and he's like, "You like this?" And I was like, "Yo, this is great, man." He's like, "So slow." And he's like, "I'll show you a movie." And maybe the next time he came home from vacation, he was from South Korea. He brought back Drunken Master 2. I was just like, what is happening? I don't even understand what I'm seeing.
I've heard this.
Incredible.
I've heard this as well, and this I think supports my point. This might have been adding to my point subconsciously. Yeah, people, especially from like that know about Hong Kong movies, and Japanese movies too, all over Asia, they're fighting. The fighting choreography is so much faster and smoother than American stuff for the most part. I mean, maybe John Wick and later stuff has kind of had a.
But I mean, they call it gung fu for a reason.
They call it gung fu, right? I mean, so we've gotten a little smoother, but I mean, it just feels like they take the cake with that stuff, man. And that's all over the culture. And so, like, that probably seeps into Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, Tekken, Art of Fighting, Samurai Showdown. You can take any Japanese fighting game, pair that with Mortal Kombat, and they're all smoother. And I'm a Mortal Kombat fan, but I'm not gonna disagree here. They are way smoother. And this is another thing that I've always thought about as well. All the like boxing games and the wrestling games made in America, that's a whole other level of stiff. Like all the Def Jam boxing, or take any boxing game made in America by EA especially or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're always stiff.
Yeah. That's pretty fair.
Always.
I did enjoy Fight Night round 3, I think it was, but at the same time, like, I recognize it was definitely a little awkward. But
there's something going on there. There's something going on there, man. And like the Japanese boxing games and the wrestling games are smoother also. It's there's just an interesting cultural thing here, I think. You know?
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to do a shout out to the listener here, but comment on this if you don't mind, if you want to, of course, and let us know have you ever noticed this kind of thing before? Because I feel like if you're like us and if you're around our age and you've grown up comparing these two things, movies, video games, whatever, I wonder if you've noticed the movement. But yeah, you're right. Anime is kind of stiff. I think it can be, especially the TV shows. But I do think you ever heard of a motion graphic novel?
Yeah.
It feels like because they want to stay so true to the manga that they, like a lot of anime, if it's not Sakuga, the Sakuga section, it is going to be kind of a motion comic and therefore a very vibrant, lively, but still stiff, limited thing.
Yeah. But that's the thing too, like I remember reading, and I wish I could say what my source was on this, but I do remember reading that, this is going back many years where, say, like Tezuka was inspired by Disney or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the animation techniques that they developed were really the result of having less, of not being able to produce to the level they wanted, but instead ended up finding that within those limitations, this is what's necessary to make things work. And I think that while they do have, say, stiffer animation styles, right, by design, I think that they tend to really work well and they only highlight what's important in the animation.
That's true.
Like those key frames are key.
Oh,
and everything
yeah, I
else
think so.
is just like, whatever's going to drive the story forward. But then when it comes time for combat or something, all right, let's get serious about this. Let's draw more frames in between things,
That's the Sakuga section.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Anything else to add to our fighting game conversation? I think we did pretty good.
Well, to go back to that original point, right, of mashing, I think that fighting games are very difficult to learn. I think that they're very easy to understand. You just look at them. But since they've gotten more and more complex with the animations and camera angles and everything, it's harder for people to follow now. And I think that when people inevitably lose, even the best players are going to lose. I think a lot of folks are really just sore about it and want to be dismissive of it, maybe explain away their own failings. And I think that is not necessarily only in fighting games.
I think you're right. I just shouldn't expect everybody to like the same things I like, but it's just in this particular example, it's just such a
I know. I
such
wish
a
more
base
people played.
misunderstanding.
I would love it.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
really would.
my best friend growing up did not. I've had this all my whole life. We were best
Mhm.
friends. He hated fighting games. We played other games together.
Now
A
let me
lot
ask
of
you a question.
yeah.
Did you beat him every time?
The time he only tried it a couple times because he just couldn't stand it, like
And
from the get go.
did he lose all those times?
Probably, but yeah,
This
I
is
don't
one of the
remember.
things I had in high school too. Like
Yeah.
like I said, I grew up in my neighborhood in the Bronx, and my friend and I played together all the time, and we'd win, we'd lose, whatever. We'd just keep playing. But when I went to high school, it just kind of dropped off because I went to a boarding school and people didn't play Street Fighter, and if I played against them, I won, and they didn't want to keep playing.
Okay. Who's your main?
It depends on the game.
Street Fighter
Street
2.
Fighter 2.
Yeah.
Well, if we're talking Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is the final version,
Uh-huh. Let's do that one.
before Hyper, whatever, I play Dalsim.
Oh, really?
Dalsim in Super Turbo is like a completely different character from the original World Warrior version, where it took like
Okay.
3 minutes to finish a jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lot faster, and I really like the way he plays. I would love to use the grapplers there, but usually I'm playing on a controller, and it's easier to play someone
Okay.
else. I'm going to do that. So Dalsim is the main there. For Street Fighter 3, it's Hugo. For Street Fighter 4, I never really established one. I played mostly Zangief.
Okay.
No. And Street Fighter 5, I actually decided to challenge myself and go for something completely outside of my wheelhouse, and I played Karen.
Oh, nice.
I
Okay.
loved her, but yeah, it was challenging.
I've always been a basic B and played as Ken mainly in almost all of them. But I mean, I love like Ibuki in
Mhm.
3. Not that I'm great at them, but Rose and Alpha, she's
Oh.
cool. You know?
Yeah, she's insanely good.
Yeah, yeah. I like Dalsim too, but he can be a little slow. But you know what? His teleport definitely like makes him actually faster than everyone
Yeah.
else in a way, if you can get
It's
that off.
it's hard for me
Akuma,
to do on a pad.
yeah, true. That's true. I love Akuma,
Mhm.
Goki. I always want to say Goki because I put my consoles in Japanese these days
Mm.
to keep the
Yeah.
language study up. But and yeah, I like them all. I loved Golkin in 4. Right? He was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool, definitely.
Yeah. Um,
It's a nice idea they did that.
yeah, I would like to see him come back, but he's probably dead in 6. So, because
That's the funny thing too about the storyline. Like, I don't care. You could
that's
just bring him
true.
back.
Yeah,
Whatever.
who gives a shit, right? People they never really make a great story anyway.
The best stories were in Street Fighter 2. You go ahead.
Yeah,
Oh, I won the game, and now Zangief is dancing with Mikhail Gorbachev. Like, that's great. That's a good story. Thank you.
exactly.
I don't need
Oh
much
man,
more. But that's because the character designs were the stories. You
right.
could tell who they were and what they were about by looking at them.
The last thing I wanted to say about Street Fighter before we get out of here was like,
Mm.
you could say that, especially in the first 2 or 3, well, 2 especially, people have said it was like just nothing but cultural appropriation. They're all stereotypes,
Mhm.
things like that. But I know being a white guy talking about this never sounds great, but it just kind of feels like
It was a
it was
different
a
time.
celebration of culture. Didn't feel like the Japanese were looking down on any of those characters they made.
Right.
It
I
was
don't feel that. Yeah.
it was an absolute celebration. They loved blood sport,
Mhm.
and they loved the world's fighting styles.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, sure, there's something stereotypical about all of them, but I mean, again, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, and we can have that conversation. But to me, it just always felt like they weren't looking down on anybody. They loved all of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Everything about it felt positive to me.
Yes,
Even
yes, yes.
like if someone were to tell me like, okay, I find this Cossack dance offensive from Zangief with Mikhail Gorbachev, then I'd be like, okay, I respect that.
Yeah.
There's not much I can say, I'm not of that heritage. What can I say, And that's
Right.
fine. But I never felt that any of it was mean spirited or really negative. So
Yeah. Yeah. They all were great characters, and it was made with a lot of love, and it was made by Japanese people in the late 80s that probably a lot of them hadn't been outside of their country. And
mhm.
as we both know, Mike,
Yeah.
Japanese people love other cultures. They love it. They talk about it more than Americans talk about other countries, I think.
Hmm.
That's probably another topic for another day. But
No.
so yeah, it's just a celebration, and there are stereotypes, but it's a type of representation in a way, because it's done with such love.
Mhm.
They're all represented, and like it's in the title too, the World Warrior. They just want to celebrate. They just wanted all that. They wanted all these fighting styles to fight against each other. It felt like they just wanted to see what that looked like,
Yeah.
So
It's a nice combination of the sort of Dragon Ball Z Budokai and the Bloodsport
yes.
yeah, let's go all around the world. And I loved it. And I still do.
Right. All right. Well, I guess on that note, we're going to get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music. And if you really liked us, please join us on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/gaming Gaiden. And we have a $1 tier and a $5 tier. And our goals mainly for this first season of the show, Mike wants to get a Mister. Explain what a Mister is, Mike.
I can't remember what Mister stands for. There's an acronym there, but basically it is an FPGA device, a field programmable gate array, that rather than emulating software, it emulates hardware. So you download a core, and that core pretends to be a Super Nintendo or maybe a CPS2 board.
That's the main draw, right? Because it will emulate old MAME games better than anything in the past.
It's they're extremely accurate in replicating the original hardware there.
That's great, man. There's still some MAME games out there that I'm still discovering. I discovered Metamorphic Man or something like that. Metamorphic Force. It was
not sure
made by Taito or something, but it was a beat 'em up, and I'd never seen it before today, but I saw it on the obscure video games Tumblr.
Nice.
But yeah, and then so that's the first goal. We're doing this whole season just to do this, but
I mean, yeah, we're really enjoying this. This is what we're all about, but we also like some nice little treats.
Obviously, yeah. So I mean, yeah, if you want to help us out, and then the other goal is for me to get a Neo Geo CDZ. So yeah, that's our Patreon goals for this season. And yeah, I guess that's it. We will catch you guys later.
Peace.